listening to the Pohu Experience.
Yo, remember the last episode when I was complaining about Netflix? So, quick recap, Netflix came out and said they wanted to clamp down on password sharing, and it just creates a lot of unnecessary trouble. Like you have to watch at least once every 31 days in your home location, or not, your account could get blocked if you're using it outside too much. Or if you go overseas or something, you have to register with them for like a 7-day pass. Just a bunch of ruckus that a lot of people were unhappy about. But then within like 24 hours, they came out with a statement saying that whole announcement was a mistake. They're not planning to do it yet. And likely they came out with that response because of how many people were complaining about it and kind of threatening to like, you know what, I'm just gonna unsubscribe if that really happens. So that was the end of that saga last week. And just these couple of days, news has started to pop up that Netflix Canada people have been getting an email where they need to set their home location because of this whole password sharing thing. In other words, it looks like Netflix is gonna go ahead with it. And well, GG's Netflix. I guess this is where things are gonna go downhill. But yes, I just wanted to start with that because it's super fresh news. Today, there's going to be a couple of things I want to go over because the past couple of days, people have been asking me about MacroFactor versus Carbon or RP Diet, and it seems like more and more people are aware of these apps, and it's not just MyFitnessPal anymore. So I thought, why don't I just break it down a little bit here so you have a clear idea what you're getting into. But first, I want to start with this. If you're seriously considering any of these apps, right, MacroFactor, RP Diet, Carbon Diet, all these three apps are subscription-based. They have very useful algorithms. They can help you a little bit more than, say, MyFitnessPal. But, and here's the big but, to use any of these tools effectively, you really need to be dialed in with your calorie counting. Like, you can't be, I'm tracking today, not tomorrow. Oh, I forgot what I had for snacks, so this might be it, and use estimates. Well, estimates are still okay, but then you wouldn't be getting the full benefits from subscribing to these apps. And I want to say that first is because, remember, calorie counting is only one way to lose weight or one way to manage your weight. It's not the end all be all. So if you don't enjoy calorie counting, this is something you just shouldn't even be considering. Like, it really doesn't matter. RP Diet, Carbon Diet, MacroFactor, you actually shouldn't be using any of these if you don't enjoy calorie counting. Just have MyFitnessPal on your phone, the free version. You don't even need the premium version. And I want to make it really clear because I know a lot of people get the wrong idea because I talk about calorie counting so much. If you're consuming my content a lot, it may start to sound like this is the superior method to lose weight or to manage weight. And that's absolutely not true at all. It is 100% my favorite method, not the best, not the only one, just one I really enjoy. And naturally, since I really enjoy it, I'm going to talk a lot about it. And I know a lot more about it because I've been doing this basically every single day since 2015. So it's been, what's this? This is my 8th anniversary of calorie counting. But in any case, let's break it down. MacroFactor, RP Diet, Carbon Diet. Which one's the best? I actually have not used RP Diet or MacroFactor. I've only used Carbon Diet. So I can't give you a review on which one is the best. But what I can say is all three of them are great based on the reviews that I've seen of them and also based on who's behind them. MacroFactor is by the team behind StrongerByScience.com, Greg Nuckols, big pillar in the evidence-based community. If I'm not mistaken, I think Jeff Nippard uses MacroFactor. So there's a very solid team behind there, and I think they're the latest one, the newest one out of Macro, RP, and Carbon. And I've seen screenshots here and there. It looks great. There's really no complaints to them. And knowing them, they're doing everything by the book and they're trying to be as factual as possible and basically take away all the downsides of MyFitnessPal and solving it in their own app, but also having this kind of AI coach that can look at your progress if you're tracking accurately for a period of time. And based on that tracking, it can recommend you how much calories to eat, how much protein, fats, carbs, based on how you're doing. So think of it like an AI coach. And so actually all three apps are similar like that. RP Diet's the same, Carbon Diet's the same. You're talking about like, yeah, all three are car companies and they're all decent car companies. All the basic functions of a car, they all have. MacroFactor is a little bit more this style, RP Diet's a little bit more that style, and Carbon Diet is a little bit whatever other style. They're basically the same thing. It's just kind of picking your favorite or which one you want, or maybe one of them's having a sale and you can end up going with that. And so RP Diet is by Dr. Mike and all the people behind RP Strength. They're very focused on bodybuilding and hypertrophy. And of course, you don't have to be a bodybuilder or be worried about, building muscle and all that to follow them. It's just they make really great content on working out, muscle building, and dieting and all that. And I've also never used it, but heard a lot of feedback about their app. I think there's a good chunk of fitness influencers out there that are using RP Diet, and they all seem to be happy with it. And same thing. It has an algorithm to help you set your calories and macros. It will keep updating like every week after you key in a week of what you're eating, the macros, the calories, and you're also keying in your daily weight so the algorithm can see how much you're eating is affecting how your weight is fluctuating. Then at the end of every week, there's likely a check-in period where they'll reevaluate everything that's gone on in the past 7 days and either recommend you new numbers to follow or to basically tell you doing great, just keep going. And then there's Carbon Diet by Lane, and you guys should know Lane. I post a lot of his stuff on IG. So I guess that one of the main questions is, why did I choose Carbon out of RP and MacroFactor? Well, it's very, very simple. It's because Carbon Diet came first. Out of all three, Carbon Diet was the first one that hit my radar when it released. Back then, I was using MyFitnessPal Premium, but remember, I only used MyFitnessPal Premium after I hit my goals. It was kind of like my way to say thank you to MyFitnessPal because it helped me achieve my goals, and the whole time I wasn't paying at all, and I thought, maybe I should start paying because it changed my life. So I was premium on MyFitnessPal. Lane was coming out with Carbon Diet, and I thought, you know what, why not just support him? Because I've learned a lot of things from Lane as well, especially in the muscle building department, and I know he developed this app from scratch, so it definitely cost him a lot to bring this to life, and I just wanted to show my support. Like, that was actually it. And in the beginning, I was still using MyFitnessPal more than Carbon. I was kind of like subscribed, but I tried all the functions out. It's kind of similar to MyFitnessPal, basically the same thing. If you use it as a calorie tracker, right, you're not using its coaching tools, like you don't have goals to stick to and everything, you're just kind of jotting down all the foods that you're eating, then it's basically the same thing as free version MyFitnessPal. You don't even need to pay for that stuff. I think the biggest difference with these three apps is that there's a coaching factor in it. That's what you're really paying for. So my recommendation would be this: don't pay for MyFitnessPal Premium because you're not getting an AI coach. MyFitnessPal Premium is a lot of just quality of life stuff, like, some better features, maybe easier tracking, or I forgot if they put like macrograms behind that paywall, because I remember there was a time where free version only shows you the percentage of protein you're eating, while if you went with premium, they show you the grams. I don't know if they changed that. It's just kind of a weird thing to put behind a paywall. But for RP, Carbon, and Macro, it tells you in grams. Like, nobody's playing with percentages. Percentages is usually just a reference point for those that aren't really tracking that diligently, which is totally fine. It's just not as useful. But one thing I do want to mention is on MyFitnessPal, you can basically find any foods out there because a lot of them is user submitted, right? But of course, that also means there could be all kinds of inaccuracies, and that's one of the biggest criticisms of MyFitnessPal. But to me, for somebody that's new, at least you could search something and it's going to come up, especially all the local stuff. You can type in all kind of like Taiwanese dishes, local dishes, like night market food type of stuff. It will show up on MyFitnessPal. You put that into MacroFactor, RP Diet, Carbon Diet, no such thing. Or even like chips and processed foods and all that, you'll likely be able to find local stuff with MyFitnessPal, also not going to be available on Macro, RP, and Carbon. Because MacroFactor, RP Diet, and Carbon Diet, they only use a database that's certified. And I remember Lane talking about this a while back. Like, he had to purchase the database, and I think he only purchased the American database. So most American stuff, like, things you might find at like Walmart or whatever, those will be available and verified. So there's no room for nonsense. There is no user submitted entries. And that's great. That means you don't have to second guess every entry you see, like on MyFitnessPal. But the downside to that is there's a bunch of foods that just don't exist in that database. Like, I remember I was having trouble finding eel on Carbon Diet, and I had to input it myself manually because I guess in the US, eel isn't common. Like, I don't even know why. I think I'll put my recommendation this way. If you're dedicated to calorie counting, and if you want some kind of AI coach, just choose one of these three. There's really not much other choices. All three of these have pillars of the evidence-based community behind them, and they have development teams that are constantly updating the app, making it better and better quality of life, better way of tracking. I think you can't go wrong with any of these three, but that is if you're willing to pay and you're looking for an AI coach. Because if you pay and you're not looking for an AI coach, then you're kind of just wasting money. You don't need this at all. You could just use MyFitnessPal free version if you don't need the coaching aspect. Because that's essentially where the money really is. Because that's essentially where the money you're spending really goes. Because don't forget, you can do a lot with MyFitnessPal, the free version. It has so many functions. It's a great app. It's really one of the first more known ones that is used for calorie counting. I think everybody that's been on this journey that is calorie counting, we've all touched MyFitnessPal in some shape or form. There's just no way around it. But now that there are other choices, I don't think MyFitnessPal is completely useless, but you got to know what you're looking for, because MacroFactor, RP Diet, Carbon Diet, these aren't magical apps either. They have perhaps more tools to help you to get to where you want to be. They perhaps are more accurate because they have an algorithm that is checking up on your progress. But all of that is meaningless if you're not accurately inputting your progress. And if you're just kind of, lazy, tracking one day, not tracking the other, it's also kind of pointless because they don't have your full data to give you a good recommendation. Then it's kind of pointless to subscribe to them as well. So I know my thoughts are a little bit more jumbled around this one, but that's basically the gist of it. Like, you can't go wrong with either of them. They're all great, but they're also all pointless unless you're really going to dedicate yourself to calorie counting, which I really feel is something you need to think about. I totally understand that calorie counting can be very stressful. And if it is creating that kind of stress in your life, that's just not something you should be pursuing. There are other options. To me, why I really love it is because, I spent most of my life not knowing, like not for sure. Back in my morbidly obese days, I try a diet or I hear, if you do this or eat this, you can lose some weight. I try all of that, but in the back of my mind, I don't know if this is true or not. I don't know if this is going to be one of those things, it didn't work on me. Like, there's no certainty in any of those things. Diet was this like gray area. Like, there's always two sides. This guy says do A and you're going to get this progress. This guy says B and you're going to get this kind of progress. But both of them are like on the opposite side of the spectrum. You kind of like vegan versus carnivore. And then both are claiming, with our way is the only way. You're going to get amazing progress if you just follow our way. So back then it was all like that until I discovered calorie counting, which I realized, wait a minute, holy shit, guys. I can gamify my food and have it guarantee results? Like, whoa. So it's like there's no longer any talk about feeling or what might or might not happen. If I ate 100 calories, it's 100 calories. That is that. There's no what if, there's no maybe this will happen, that will happen. No, 100 calories is 100 calories. And then, I start to learn more about the process. You understand the law of thermodynamics. You start to understand if you're in a consistent calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight. This is the law of nature. This isn't even debatable. Then I start to realize, so if I'm accurate in my numbers, progress is guaranteed? Wait, guaranteed? I spent my whole freaking life trying all these diets. None of them is a guarantee. All of them is like jumping between religion and cults. But calorie counting makes this possible to track in numerical form and be guaranteed. And that's where I'm just like, oh my God, I love this. I want to track every day. This is so fun. How else can I plan my food? Okay, goal is 2,000 calories. Let's see. I could fit a Big Mac here. But if I take the Big Mac out, I might be able to do 6-piece nugget and the Filet-O-Fish. But, that means I definitely have to go with Diet Coke. Can't do regular Coke. That kind of thing is so fun for me. And that's why I'm just all about calorie counting. It's like, even to this day, sometimes I'm just in my calorie counting app, I'm in Carbon app, and I'm just playing around with what to eat the next meal. I'm planning my calories there, see what I can afford, see what I can't, see what edges I can push, see where I can save up. And to me, this is basically a game. This is Final Fantasy real life. This is World of Warcraft real life. And I really enjoy it. And that's why I'm so into it. But I know not everybody likes Final Fantasy. Not everybody likes WoW. Not everybody likes all this numbers mumbo jumbo. And if you don't like it, you have a dictionary/calculator in your pocket. You can go figure out on the fly how much foods are worth and use your way on planning how to control the portions and foods that you're eating on a regular basis. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is diet breaks. It's a question I get quite frequently, and usually the question is so just out of the blue. Like, it will be, hey, do you think I should take a diet break? And my first reaction is always like, man, I need some more context, right? I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what your goals are. And without context, I don't know. Like, how would I know if you need a diet break or not? But after having that conversation multiple times, getting asked that question again and again and again, I realized I think a lot of articles out there that are talking about diet breaks and reverse diets are just really magnifying what it can do and how necessary it is, that I want to break it down here. So at least I can point to something in the future if someone's asking, should they go on a diet break or not? So to define what a diet break is, it is as it sounds, right? It's taking a break from your diet, meaning taking a break from your calorie deficit. And break doesn't mean, go eat whatever you want, just party until coming back. That's called a vacation. That's not a diet break. Diet break is a stretch of time where you eat at maintenance. So you're still in control of your calories. You're not in a weight loss phase, but you're in a maintenance phase. You're maintaining your weight. On paper, it's usually recommended anywhere between 1 to 4 weeks. Less than a week, it's more like a cheat day or a vacation. More than 4 weeks, it's more like a maintenance phase. It's not a break anymore. You're going through a maintenance phase, which is a whole other conversation if you want to go down that route. And so what's the point of a diet break? Well, it's the same of, taking a break from work or from school. It's to chill out, to de-stress, to relax. And I think the main thing that people read into is the whole metabolism part. When you're in a calorie deficit, your metabolism's getting lower and lower. And that's normal. That's part of the process. When you go on a diet break and you're at maintenance, your metabolism stops going lower and lower and starts to build itself back up because you're no longer eating less than your body needs. Now, how relevant is that to your overall progress? Honestly, not relevant at all. In the sense of that's just the way things work. It's not gonna make or break your progress. Taking a diet break, letting your metabolism build back up a little bit, it's not gonna mean that you can have a free Big Mac every day during the maintenance phase. It's not gonna increase your TDEE by a whole lot. You're talking about 100-200 calories or less. On paper, the usual recommendation is every 8 to 12 weeks of being in a deficit that you go on a diet break from 1 to 4 weeks to kind of let your body reset. And I really hate using that term, but it really is what it's kind of like a reset. Because remember, in a deficit, you're creating stress, right? You're creating stress mentally, you're creating stress physically, you're eating less than your body expends. It's a stressful period of time on your body. And the break kind of lets your body, take a break and relax a little before you get back into it. So usually 8 to 12 weeks of being in a deficit, followed by 1 to 4 weeks break, and then back on another 8 to 12 weeks deficit. And you just keep going until you hit your goals. Now, all of that on paper, right? That's what a diet break does. My personal thoughts, I think it's quite unnecessary. Because remember, the way my journey went, it took me 1 year, 10 months to lose over 50 kilograms. I took 0 diet breaks. I did not feel the need of a diet break. Thinking back, I don't feel any negative impact from it, from not taking a break at all. And so this would be my recommendation. If you feel good, if you're in a calorie deficit and you feel good, obviously being in a calorie deficit, there's a little bit of struggle, right? You're struggling a little bit with hunger, with cravings, but you're managing, you're fine. You know you can keep going. If that's you, forget the break, just keep going. But if, say, you're getting towards week 7, week 8, or week 11 of being in a consistent calorie deficit and you're feeling it like, oh man, you're mentally exhausted, trying to stick to your routine, you feel hunger and cravings harder and harder to fight, that's when I would say, you know what, just go for a diet break. Take 1-2 weeks off at maintenance and come back to it and see how you feel. Perhaps that's all you needed. You needed that break to feel a little bit more refreshed, to get back on track and keep going. That's totally fine too. But if you're not feeling that, you're feeling totally fine, I really don't see the point of a diet break. I do see the point if you're a competitive bodybuilder and you're going through a fat loss phase, but that's a completely different story. That's not somebody that's overweight and just wants to get into normal weight for health. These are not the type of people going through bulk and cut cycles. So that's a totally different story on diet breaks. For most of us that are just trying to reach a certain number on the scale and we plan to do it just once and never again, and most likely not going to go on a bulk cycle, I really don't think breaks are necessary at all. The tool is there if you want to use it, but don't think that, hey, I've been in a calorie deficit for about 8 weeks and I feel good. Maybe I should just take a break. It's like, oh no, I feel you should just keep going if that's the case. Because if you're doing well, don't break the momentum. Keep going. If you're losing momentum, it's starting to feel harder and harder. You know what? Take the break. Recalibrate a little bit. Eat at maintenance so you get to enjoy a little bit more food for a little bit. Then between 1 to 4 weeks, when you're ready, get back on track. All is good. And so diet breaks is literally that. It's something so simple, but articles out there, social media, really blown it out of proportion. It's just something most of us don't need, but it's good to know. It's good to know it's there if you need it. A little update on my meal prep and cooking. So for the whole past week, so from last episode to now, past 7 days, I've been cooking every single day. So I guess this is my new routine now. This is my new meal. I should probably just break down my current meal structure so you get a better idea of it. Currently, my breakfast is a scoop of whey protein, and it's actually a mounding scoop. I actually weigh it. It's around 36 grams of whey, which the brand that I'm having comes down to about 30 grams of protein. Breakfast is usually that first thing in the morning. That's what I drink. Lunch will be a Subway, but this time it's a foot long. And these days I'm going with the chicken teriyaki and chicken with honey mustard. And I'll add an additional roast chicken breast, which isn't actually roast chicken breast. It's that little sausage thing that they have. I'll have that. That's for lunch. And then dinner will be where I'm prepping the food and cooking every single day, which is a huge pot of fish soup. Basically 250 grams of fish. I've been going with sea bream or salmon, whichever is available, looks better at the market. Veggies, I'll have around 150 grams, and that usually is cabbage, spinach, or pea sprouts. I'll add some mushroom in there, about 50 grams. I'll have 2 eggs, which the way I boil it is kind of like soft boiling them, like not with the shell, without the shell, but I try to swirl it around while they're in the soup boiling to kind of take that egg shape. But then when you break it open, the yolk is still runny, almost like a poached egg, but not really a poached egg. It's just a normal water with a ridiculous shape. And in all of that, I will add a pack of Shin Ramen seasoning. Oh, which I struck gold, by the way, because I found out that my mom keeps a lot of the seasoning packages, because usually she cooks 2 for her and my dad, but they only use 1 pack of seasoning for the 2 packs of noodles. So I kind of just yoinked a couple weeks worth of seasoning the other day. On top of that, 200 grams of white rice. And yeah, it's a huge meal, but it's so satisfying. And it comes down to like 750, 800 calories, which is kind of low for the amount of food that is. And that just carries me for the rest of the night. Like I'm literally not hungry at all until the next day. And I made the switch and have been really loving it because I realized I had a soup craving. Like I just really crave soup whenever I'm browsing on Uber Eats. I'm like looking at all the soupy stuff. And so one of the days I was like, you know what, I must just make my own. Then I can control all the ingredients. I don't have to worry. This one has this one has that. Is it too salty, not salty enough? I'll just make my own. And once I did it, I realized this is so easy. Just put everything in the pot, add water to a certain amount, put the seasoning in, let it boil. Done. Even the dishwashing part is like, I'm just washing a pot and a bowl for the white rice. So everything has been working fine and dandy. And these days I've literally been playing in Carbon Diet app, trying to figure out what ingredients I can put into this mini hot pot of mine for the next day. Like I think today I'm adding in some pumpkin and some beef tripe, and it's just really fun for me. And the main reason I chose fish for my protein is because I'm just lacking fats in my diet, because I realize I have a very natural tendency to pick carbs whenever I have extra calories. I'm totally fine not eating fats. I'd rather spend all of my calories on carbs, but then there is a minimum amount of fat that you should be eating every day for health reasons. And so I had to at least make sure I'm hitting that. So my aim is like every day at least be getting 40 to 50 grams of fat. If I don't watch out for it, it's so easy for me to just be at like 10 to 20 grams, which is just way too low. And it starts affecting all kinds of stuff, especially hormones and all that. And why I used the Shin Ramen seasoning? Well, one reason I was craving Shin Ramen, so I wanted that taste. But number 2 is out of most of the instant noodles that I eat, Shin Ramen is the one that doesn't have an oil pack, which means it's just a lot easier to track. And now that I'm on a cutting phase, I'm trying to cut away the bulk that I did, a year or so back. I want to be a little bit more strict with my calories, so it just kind of works out. Most of the Korean instant noodles, they don't have an oil pack, which is just super convenient for me. Not that there's anything wrong with the oil packs. I could actually, if I put the effort in, I could estimate and track that, but I don't really want to put in that extra work if I don't need to. There is a new segment that I want to try, and it is called Recipe Breakdown, where I just go through general recipes of certain dishes and break down where, if possible, we can modify the ingredients so that it'll be lower in calories per serving, but still keep a similar taste. Like, you don't want to be making like a chocolate chip cookie and, modify all these ingredients and it comes out not tasting like a chocolate chip cookie. It's tasting like something completely different. Like, you don't want to do that, but there are places that you could shave off that maybe one cookie used to be 200 calories. Now it's 120 instead, that kind of direction. And for me, I realized this is a fun pastime thing that I actually do on my own. Like when I'm looking at recipes, that's how my brain is working. It's like, I could change this to this, change this to that. Over time, I was thinking about it. I realized I don't really see anybody doing content about this out there. I think most content out there about cooking, they won't really talk about calories, right? I mean, the ones that do, they're just kind of telling you the total calories. They're not telling you what to switch in and out. At least there's not many shows dedicated to that. And if the recipe is more about diet and weight loss, they're very rarely, they're not going to be talking about chocolate chip cookies, right? Diet and weight loss stuff, they're going to talk about healthy foods, whole foods. They're going to be avocado spreads or, how to make this big ass salad. It's usually in that direction. And then you have the other extreme where if it's like Gordon Ramsay, he don't give a shit about calories. He's just going to like using pork oil is a lot more fragrant, a lot better than olive oil because olive oil doesn't have that pungent aroma. And so there's those two extremes, but you don't really see them together at all, which for me, I think it was just kind of a lucky spot to be in where I'm really into calorie counting and I'm really into cooking as well. And really into, it's not like I'm chef level or anything. It's just, I love breaking down ingredients and cooking them. That's all there is to it. And I think I have enough cooking skill to not be a chef, but good enough to know what I'm talking about. I don't think there's a dish that I can't make if you give me instructions and ingredients. I know my way around the kitchen, and I know if I don't have certain ingredients, I know what you could replace to get a similar effect. And so I thought, why not just bring that to light? Why not just start making a segment and actually share it and talk about it as content in some form? And I think the podcast is perfect for this because I talk about this a lot with friends and family. If we're discussing certain dishes and they'll say oh yeah, but that dish is so fattening. And then I'd respond, yeah, but then, if you make it with this ingredient instead of this, it actually makes it not that fattening. It's, kind of low in calories. So anyways, I'm rambling on. Point is, new segment to the show called Recipe Breakdown. And, I used to do this with the kiddos, when they were a lot younger and a little bit more picky with food. So they really like spaghetti bolognese. And if you know spaghetti bolognese, it's really just mincemeat and tomatoes, right? And so when I understood the basics of how to make spaghetti bolognese, I realized if I chop veggies finely enough, I can hide them in there and they would have no idea. They'd still, yummy. But the nutrient content of that spaghetti bolognese was definitely way, way, way higher than your general spaghetti bolognese that you buy outside or cook yourself off a recipe from Google. So anyways, let's just go straight into it. And I think the first recipe, we'll just go with spaghetti and bolognese. So I Googled, pulled up a generic spaghetti and bolognese recipe. I just picked the one that has the most positive ratings, go to ingredient section, and I'll read it out loud here and see, what we can do to maybe make it a little bit less calories, but not affecting the taste too much. So spaghetti bolognese ingredients, there's 1 tablespoon of olive oil. This recipe asks for 4 pieces of bacon, onions, carrots, celeries, garlic, rosemary. All those are, not really much to change there because all those are low in calories. The bacon we can do something about though, but let's go on and see what else is there. 500 grams of minced beef, 2 tins of tomatoes, basil, oregano, bay leaves, tomato puree, beef stock, red chili, red wine, cherry tomatoes. All right, so it seems like the things that have the most calories here is likely the minced beef and the bacon. I think you could totally just take out the bacon. Bacon definitely adds, that nice aroma that the fats is so fragrant to the dish, but it doesn't really take away from spaghetti bolognese. I think you could take it all out and that would easily be 500 to 800 calories gone because bacon's really high in calories because it's mostly fat. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just the goal with recipe breakdown is how do we minimize the calories? So let's just completely skip bacon. Now, if you insist you want a little bit of bacon in there, then okay, this recipe asks for 4 pieces of bacon. Why not just use 1? You'll get a punch with 1 as well. The next thing that you could look into is the 500 grams of minced beef because minced beef depends on the fat content, right? 20% fat minced beef versus 5% or 2% is a huge difference in terms of calories. Now, if you're trying to be calorie conscious, definitely go with the leaner side. It's not going to affect the overall taste much at all. And I think these are the only 2 things you could change in this spaghetti bolognese recipe if you really wanted to cut down the calories because everything else, onions, carrots, celeries, or, oregano, bay leaves, all this stuff is really basically no calories. Yes, obviously there's some, but it's really, really insignificant and taking it away, there's really no point. There's really no point of taking any of this away, but 100% making sure it's lean minced beef and either you don't include the bacon or just use 1,000,000%, you're making this dish a lot lower in calories, which means you could eat a bigger portion. If you're trying to eat, 500 calories worth of this spaghetti bolognese, if you follow the exact recipe, it's going to be a smaller portion than if you ate 500 calories worth of this adjusted version. And so that's spaghetti bolognese. Let's try something else. This time I'm pulling up banana bread. There was a phase a couple of years ago where mommy used to make a lot of banana bread from all the extra bananas we'd have at home. It's when all the bananas at home are starting to turn black, it means, all right, time to make some banana bread because that's the sweetest bananas. And with that amount of sweetness, usually you could cut a lot of sugar and it's still kind of sweet. wheat. And so let's look at this recipe. It asks for 140 grams of butter, 140 grams of castor sugar, 2 large eggs, 140 grams of self-rising flour, teaspoon of baking powder, 2 very ripe bananas, 50 grams of icing sugar, and a handful of banana chips for decoration. Okay, so immediately we can probably skip the dry banana chips. We're trying to lower the calories, right? We can sacrifice the decoration. And so the main things I'm looking at here is we can't really touch the self-rising flour. And flour by itself isn't that calorie dense, but usually if you're making a baking dish, flour isn't something you could really replace. Like, yeah, you could do whole wheat flour or whatever, but it's going to be similar calories anyway. So if you're trying to make yummy food, just stick to the yummy ingredient. Go with the white flour. It's totally fine. So the main thing here would be the 140 grams of butter and 140 grams of castor sugar and the 50 grams of icing sugar. So the icing sugar, I feel you could skip and it's not going to taste that much different, or you could totally drop it down to like 10 grams. You'll have some effect of the icing sugar, but it won't make the banana bread hit or miss. Butter and castor sugar over here is, I think, where we make the most judgment. None of those you can go completely zero, but I do feel you could use just a third. Is it going to affect the texture and taste? Absolutely. 1,000,000% it's going to affect it. Following this recipe to the T, you'll probably have super, super yummy banana bread, but also super, super high in calories. By using a third of the butter and the sugar, I think you can still get a 80% yummy. Like, you can still enjoy your banana bread and you can enjoy it more often. And you're cutting down the calories by like more than 50% at that point per portion. Like if you really wanted to go all in, which I don't recommend because it will end up tasting a little bit different, but you could totally just use artificial sugar instead of sugar. And that cuts sugar calories to 0. But then in my experience, using artificial sugar to bake, it has this, I don't want to say weird taste, but it tastes different. Like it's just, something's wrong with this, or something's like not matching with this. So I tend to not replace sugar with artificial sugar. I just use less of it. And also if you're thinking about, what if I use brown sugar instead? It's like the same thing with the flour, man. Brown sugar, white sugar, rock sugar, all the same. Sugar is sugar. Calories are very similar. And I think if you like banana bread, you can play around with the amount of sugar you include versus how many ripe bananas you're including, because you could include more bananas and kind of treat the bananas as the source of sweetness. And then from there, that means you can take away, perhaps you just completely take away icing sugar, and then that will drop the calories. But you're starting to see how easy it is to just kind of make some adjustments to everyday recipes out there that you find on Google. And you basically made a normal thing like a banana bread, spaghetti bolognese, and you made it into like a low calorie version. You made it into literally what people are searching for, a diet recipe or a fat loss recipe. This is exactly it. This is a fat loss recipe because you're having less calories. Because if you type in like fat loss recipes into Google, all you get is like all these whole food recipes, right? All this avocado stuff, all this like salmon or, salad or whatever it is. It's like that's what people think fat loss recipes look like. When actually, if fat loss is your main goal, it's just about eating less calories. And eating less calories means, well, you don't need me to go down that rant again, right? If you're listening to this podcast, you probably heard this a million times. So I'm not going to bore you. I'm going to go into the next recipe to break down, which is oyakodon. If you don't know what oyakodon is, it's a Japanese dish, which is basically cut up chicken cooked in egg and poured on top of white rice. It's a dish I used to always order whenever going to like Japanese restaurants when I was younger. In my eyes, this is like the definition of comfort food. It's just something about it. I mean, it's eggs, it's chicken, nice soy sauce on top of steamed white rice. Like, what's not to love? And it's actually really easy to make. If you go on YouTube and just watch one of the guides on how to cook it, you'll see that, man, you can make this every day relatively quickly. And it's yummy, quick, good protein content. There's really nothing to hate. So breaking it down, it needs chicken thigh. It needs sake, onion, eggs, mitsuba, which apparently is some kind of parsley celery thing. Okay, so consider it vegetable or herb, whatever it is. Need some dashi, which is basically like Japanese fish stock, which can actually be replaced with salt. You don't actually need to use that. Soy sauce, mirin, and sugar. And of course, steamed rice. Okay, so all of the ingredients here so far, I don't think I would change much. The sugar in this recipe I know is not a lot, and you could also just not use it. It doesn't really affect the taste that much. There's like different versions of oyakodon, right? You don't put in the sugar, it's just a more saltier version. You put in the sugar, it's just a lighter version. That's really the big difference, but you're not really missing out on the gist of the main dish. And so I think there's really nothing to change. This dish by itself is just quite low in calories, actually. It all comes down to serving size. size, how many eggs you're including in it and how much rice you're eating with it as well. I guess if you really wanted to change, this recipe calls for chicken thighs. If you go for chicken breast, you probably dropped 100-200 calories easily, simply because chicken thighs is just a little bit higher in calories because they have a little bit more fat content, and chicken breast has zero fat content, and that's it. I think this is one of those really good examples where you'll never find this dish if you're Googling fat loss recipe. But if there are dishes in your life that you really love, that you grew up with, I think it's a good idea just to go kind of deep dive into what are the actual ingredients in creating that dish. Because you may find, like oyakodon, this dish is actually quite calorie friendly. It's not high in calories at all. You don't really have to make any changes. You could have it as it is. You could enjoy this regularly and still be losing weight relatively easily. And it's when you find these things out, the weight loss journey becomes so much easier. Life becomes a lot easier because now you have no more guilt as well, right? Like when I go out and I order oyakodon, I know I'm eating well. Like I know maybe I gotta calculate some numbers or whatever. It's like, no, I know this is perfectly fine no matter where I'm having it because this is basically the recipe that everybody uses. It's not an altered version. It's not like a chocolate chip cookie, right? If you get your favorite chocolate chip cookie, especially the soft kind, there's a lot of sugar in there. There's a lot of butter in there. But when you go out and order oyakodon in any place, in roadside or restaurant or cafe, the chances of you overeating is very, very little. Like the only thing you probably have to watch out for if you go out and eat oyakodon is how much rice they're giving you. Some places just give you a hell lot of rice, and that's the thing that you got to control. But the dish itself, you can still enjoy it as it is. So yes, highly, highly encourage you to go and just make a list of all of your favorite foods and go look up their recipes, whatever it is, whether it's fried noodles, fried rice, curry of any sort, like whatever it is, go check it up. You can either make the adjustments if you're going to make it for yourself or realize that no adjustment is needed and life is good. So we're going to go through a couple more. Since I talked about chocolate chip cookies, why don't we go through a chocolate chip cookie recipe? And this recipe is the soft chocolate chip cookie recipe. So let's take a look. 100 grams of white sugar, 165 grams of brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, 115 grams of butter, 1 egg, 155 grams of all-purpose flour, half teaspoon baking soda, 110 grams of chocolate chunks, so I guess chocolate chips, 110 grams of dark chocolate. I think this will be the tough one. When I make chocolate chip cookies, if I'm craving for like chocolate chip cookies, I actually just kind of follow the recipe because that's what I'm looking for, right? I'm looking for that softness, that sugar rush. I want everything about a chocolate chip cookie if I'm craving for the chocolate chip cookie. But of course, if you're somebody that wants it to have it more on a regular basis, like every day, you probably don't want to go with this recipe because like one cookie will probably be 200 calories, which is like one bowl of rice already. So where do we make the cut? I think it's the same. You start cutting from the sugars. So it asks for like 100 grams of white sugar, 165 grams of brown sugar. I want to just half that, half the sugar and half the butter as well. Is it going to affect the texture of the cookie? 100% yes. But you're going to still get at least 80% of it. It might not be as chewy, but still chewy. It might not be as soft, but still soft. And I think this is where if you really wanted to make chocolate chip cookies, you experiment. You just experiment and figure out like, okay, all these things that I'm changing, how is it affecting the outcome of the cookie? And is this acceptable for me? If it's acceptable and you cut all these things out, great. Now you got like a new recipe that fits your diet and you could eat basically anytime you want. And where it asks for the chocolate chips, 110 gram, and then another 110 gram of dark chocolate chips. So a total of 220 grams of chocolate. What I have done before is go out and buy an actual chocolate bar that is like 85, 90, or 99% chocolate. Like you've seen those bars, right? Over here, they even sell it at like the 7-Elevens. I'll buy those bars and just crush it up in a plastic bag and use that as my chocolate chip. The thing about that is the higher concentration of chocolate in a chocolate bar means it's lower in calories because it means there's, less sugar, less butter in it and all that. But you're still really getting the chocolate taste. It's going to taste ultra chocolatey. I guess the only people I wouldn't recommend this to is you're somebody that just can't accept dark chocolate, like bitter chocolate. If you don't like bitter chocolate, don't do this. It'll ruin your experience. But if you're okay with any kind of chocolate, just having chocolate is a good day to you, definitely go for those like 85% and above ones. Those are a godsend for all kinds of chocolate recipes when you want to lower the calories. And so stuff like in this recipe, you have like vanilla extract, the 1 egg, the salt, salt, the baking soda. Like in most recipes, there are things that there's just no point to change. And it's likely quite essential to the whole recipe. So just leave it alone. Like, vanilla extract sounds like it may be something. It's like, that's literally almost like 0 calories. Don't worry about that. Baking soda, nothing to worry about. Salt, even less to worry about. So remember, in a recipe, when you see things that doesn't seem to have a lot of calories, just don't touch it. Just include it. Just follow the recipe as it is. And the final one we're going into today is cheesecake, because there was a request on it on IG. It was one of the most asked ones on IG when I asked for suggestions on what recipes I should break down. So here it is. It's a cheesecake. Now remember, I just Googled and just picked one generic one with the highest ratings. So the ingredients, it says for the crust of the cheesecake, you need graham crackers, 170 grams, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, and 7 tablespoons of melted butter. For the cheesecake, you need 910 grams of cream cheese, cup of sugar, 2/3 cup of sour cream, which is 160 grams, teaspoon of vanilla extract, teaspoon of salt, 4 large eggs. Okay, for the crust, I don't think there's much to change but to half the sugars and the butter, but I don't know if you half the butter, will it solidify? And that's something you have to think about. You have to think about like, what are the ingredients doing for the dish? If an ingredient is acting as glue and you take away the glue, then the recipe crumbles. So you don't want that. The 170 grams of graham cracker crumbs, I don't think you can take away from that, because you take away the crumb, you start having a very thin crust that might not be usable. So I wouldn't play around with that because I'm no expert in cheesecake. 2 tablespoons of sugar, change that to 1 tablespoon. It has 2 tablespoons of white sugar, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. So both of those just have it. It's actually not that significant because 1 tablespoon of sugar is like roughly 50 calories. It's not that significant, but it's still a change, right? Okay, so that's the crust. Now on the cheesecake, it asks for 910 grams of cream cheese. I don't know how much you can change that without affecting the cheesecake. I think instead of 910 grams, you might be able to get away with 700 grams, and that would be a big difference. Remember, cheese has a lot of fat content, which means there's a lot of calories in it. That's something you'd have to experiment, but I definitely wouldn't have it right away. It asks for a cup of sugar, which is 200 grams of sugar. I'm pretty sure this is the place where the sugar you can cut and not much of a difference is going to be made in terms of the texture of the cheesecake. Sour cream, 160 grams. I'd cut that to 100 grams, maybe even 80 grams. So you're using half of it. From there, that's a significant amount of calories we cut from this cheesecake recipe just by cutting down the amount of cheese and sugar that we're using it for the actual cake. But I know because mommy's made cheesecake a couple of times. I know cheesecake is a lot more delicate. If you're really going to make this dish, there's going to be a little bit more trial and error. It's less straightforward than, say, a spaghetti bolognese or like oyakodon. This is something that you'll have to try out, see what happens when you make those adjustments. But I think it's pretty safe to make those that I just suggested. But yeah, that will be the end of this episode's recipe breakdown. And let me know what you think. Like, is this helpful at all? Because like, this is part of what I do on a regular basis. Like, mommy and I will be having a conversation. She might be saying something like, oh, I'm craving chili crab. And then, I'll go look up some chili crab recipes and, see how it goes. I realize that at least in my circles, I'm the only one that does this. Like, nobody else really cares that much about calories or about recipes to be going this in depth into making all the changes. But for me, it's kind of fun, So leave a comment on one of my IG, DM me or email me. Like, let me know what recipes you want me to go into. And that wraps up the episode for this week. I kind of wanted to talk about a thing I've been going through these past couple of weeks, but it feels a bit early and I'm not able to kind of form my thoughts around it so concisely yet. So I'll save it for another episode. But what it is it's kind of a workout dilemma that I've been having where it's been quite evident to me that working out is creating a lot of brain fog. I thought I was special in the sense of this is just something I'm going through because I don't hear much people talk about it. But then over the past couple of months, I'm starting to hear a couple of fitness influencers mention the exact same thing kind of just offhandedly. And I started to dig into it and realize that, I'm actually not the only one that feels this way, but people have just kind of accepted it's part of what it is and kind of scheduled their life around it. Meaning with other fitness content creators, their strategy seems to be no content on workout days. Like it's 100% clear to them that you have to separate that because on workout days when you're going hard, there's no way that your brain's fresh enough to be creating any kind of content. Like your creativity is just completely out the the window. And that's what I've been facing for years on and off. And I always thought it's just, maybe I just didn't find the balance, or maybe I'm not getting enough sleep. I always think that there's just something off, but it's getting to a point where I think I just have to accept that it is what it is and kind of schedule around it. But I'll gather my thoughts, talk more in depth about it on another episode. So this is it for this week. I've been keeping up with a lot of the AI news, but also I need to see more of that before I can really comment on it. But it's truly fascinating. It really feels like it just came out of nowhere. 2022 December, AI wasn't like this. And now we have easily accessible AI voice where you could feed somebody's voice. Like you see out there, people are feeding Joe Rogan's voice and making him say stuff that he would never say. The process has become as easy as using Google Translate. Like I remember, if you ever watched the series 24 with Jack Bauer, one of the episodes was he was trying to hunt down this hacker because he had a program sophisticated enough to make the president say anything he wanted to say. And it was like starting a war or whatever. And it was Jack's mission to stop this hacker. It was like a whole 24 episodes on it. And now it's like, yeah, you just go to Google, feed in the AI, the voice you want, and type things out and make it say whatever. And nobody can tell the difference. Like, holy crap. Like, what world are we living in now? Like, it's so interesting to me. But I'm just still mouth open, in awe, don't know what to say yet, just watching how everybody is playing around with it. Get more into it another time. That's it for today. See you in the next one. Peace.